What a lot of people don't seem to understand is that even in 2020, Tesla's separate AI stacks could design parts, draw them in 3D CAD, and not just that, but also simulate wear testing, guess at the cost to manufacture, and suggest manufacturing steps in the factory best suited to the part. People don't get that.
Yeah.
That's the 2.5 to 5 to 7 year cycle in most companies, and
Right.
it's happening multiple times a second.
Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am with the one, the only Joe Justice. It is amazing to talk to you again. It's so cool. And you're coming to me from the future because it's tomorrow in Japan and it's today here. So damn, I mean, that's amazing. You got 14 hours on me. You have to tell me what the future's like, but I guess you got a question. So we're going to kind of do things a little different. We're going to interview each other, ask questions of each other, whatever. So what's your first question to me?
Now, I think you just got out of watching the second half of Dune. Dune movie. And I loved the first Dune movie. I had no expectations. Somehow I was living in a bubble. I hadn't heard about it at all. And I saw it on a flight, not knowing what it was. And I was shocked. I'd read the books, and I was,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I've been waiting for the second half. You just walked out of it. How do you feel? I mean, no spoilers, well, spoil what you want. Go nuts.
Well, I mean, it does not vary from the book very much. So if you read the book, you already know how it kind of goes down. Although there are some twists and stuff. Super impressive visually. I did not see it on an airplane. Please watch this one on a GTX screen or IMAX or something big, because holy mackerel, the visuals are incredible. And Hans Zimmer, I mean, I feel like these two movies are his like magnum opus at this point. It's like he has hit his stride, and the music is wow. In fact, it was so shocking because it actually just is over black screen, and then it's got this really creepy dude voice reading, the guy that like was sort of reading that stuff to the Sardaukar at one point, that like that thing, it starts black with that. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. So I was like, Denis Villeneuve is like, he's on his game. Hans Zimmer's on his game. It's also very long. It was, I think, 2 hours and 40 minutes, something like that. So it's, that's the second half of the movie. Right. And I went with my two of my sons, and one of them, his girlfriend, and she had never read the book or watched the first half. So I was trying in the 10-minute car ride to the movie theater to explain the first half to her. And I was like, oh my gosh, this book is so complicated. It's like, okay, so this happened, and then this happened, and then there's these Bene Gesserit who are like witches in control. It was like, I was like, how do I explain this in 10 minutes? So definitely watch the first half if you haven't read the book or seen the first half, but it is a worthy successor to the first half, and the first half was like amazing. Yeah.
Dr. Know-It-All seal of approval.
Yes. I am not the critical drinker, but I will, I'll drink some water to it. So there you go. Do you ever watch The Critical Drinker?
No, I live in a bubble.
You need to watch that. It's just like when you're going to bed at night or something and you just kind of want some fluff to watch. He gets into these movies and he just lays waste to them. It's so funny. And so his persona is this like drunk Scottish dude. Oh gosh, or is he Irish? Uh-oh.
Yeah, the important difference that seems like a
I know, and I'm going to get
far away is where I am right now, but a very important difference.
I'm sorry. I apologize to him for not knowing right offhand. But anyway, he's very funny. But when he gives his seal of approval to a movie, it's like, this is going to be a good one. So, yeah, exactly. In fact, he gave his seal of approval to the Barbie movie, and I Am Knuff. So there we go. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he was particularly thrilled with that one, but he was like, look, it served its target audience and made people happy. So, so anyway, yep. All right. So, wow. You asked me such a good question. I'm going to ask you a boring question. I want to know, because this whole thing started several weeks ago when I saw your talk in France, in Paris, right? About Tesla One. And so, you asked me a small question. I'm going to ask you this gigantic question. What is so amazing about Well, just say, first of all, what is Tesla One? Yeah. What is this thing that they do?
So when I was an employee of Tesla in 2020, mostly in Fremont, but I did go to Hawthorne, California, and Boca Chica while I was an employee. There were separate AI stacks for a question that was useful for the business. Like, I just tried a new way of painting a car. I spent a lot of time in paint. Is
Right.
it better? Like that's a question you'd want to know right away. So you can, because the next car is coming, like a second to 3 seconds behind, depending.
Right.
I want to know right now, was that a good idea or a bad idea? And so there'd be an AI stack trained to give a very useful answer to that immediately with essentially no human recognizable delay.
Right.
And I visited or joined, I either participated in or took notes on every single position in Fremont. And as far as I could tell, every position had one or more AIs to answer questions that might be useful to that area, to what was going on there. And they were all separate as far as I could tell. They had, it looked like many common elements of basically drag and drop code from the user's perspective, but lots of backend libraries,
Right.
but they were separate. After I retired from Tesla in 2020, Tesla announced they've combined them all with other functional aspects of running the business software as well, like time tracking to meet California labor law and vacation time planning, like mundane business stuff too.
Right.
But that's the cool thing about the Musk companies, inside and maybe even outside. The mundane is combined with the futuristic to just solve the problem really elegantly, really efficiently. And they combine them all into Tesla One. Now, I did not experience using Tesla One. It happened after I was retired, but I imagined, wow, all those stacks together, that's got to be the most valuable part of the company. That has to be absurdly more valuable than any other company's digital assets. And most people probably have no idea of how to financially appreciate that.
Right. And of course, just as a small aside, of course, Tesla developed this themselves. I mean, they're famously don't even use anybody else's accounting software. It's all roll your own, basically. Yeah.
The 3D drawing software, the CAD, is in-house because that plays better with Tesla AIs. When you make your own software, you can connect them.
Right.
And a point of view, an unpopular point of view that is completely obvious is basically cost of electricity is your limiting factor for your business. AI training is the limiting factor for your business. AI usability, AI utility is the limiting factor for your business. That's limited by training data and training time and training quality.
Right.
Well, even the quality of the data and the data collection comes from suggestions from your AI. So it comes back to AI time. And that's limited by electricity. And that's limited by cost of electricity. And that is not well appreciated. Like that is how much electricity can you produce, catch from the sun, buy? That's it. And then are you making good on that? Are you doing the hard work then required to make good on that? And businesses are like a bacteria dropped into an agar dish full of sugar, and that sugar is electricity. And then how efficiently they digest that electricity into great business, that's the quality of the business, the mindset of the founder, the culture of the company, all those important things. The purpose of all those important things is to transform the sugar into expanding bacteria colony as fast as possible. Well, if you switch bacteria for value of the business,
exactly.
There we go. And Tesla One is it. Well, then Musk says recently at Bosch that AI is getting 10x about every 6 months. I think I got that quote right. Near right.
Yeah.
Well, what I saw was 2020. Like I can't. I get excited imagining what Tesla One might really be right now.
Right. That is crazy. And I know Elon has been famously several times mentioned the fact that transformers are going to be a choke point, a limiting factor. The big power transformers to take down the high voltage stuff down to 240 two-phase, to go into factories. And it's it's so wild that he is aware of something like that. Who on the planet even knows that? It's like, that's just nuts that he's looking forward and going within the next couple of years, transformers are going to be a major bottleneck because we won't be able to step down the power. From
I may or may not have worked on a government project related to that.
Interesting.
And if I did, like most government projects, the findings were produced, put in front of politicians, and zero action may have happened.
Right.
So it is still up to Musk.
Yeah, that sounds hypothetically, of course, exactly right. Here, we'll spend a whole bunch of money to not do anything. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Wow. John.
Yes.
You have been immersed in embodied AI.
Yes.
And I have not.
Okay.
Can you teach the internet through this video by teaching me what's exciting about it right now? And basically, what's the current state of it? What can and can it not seem to do? And what's exciting about that currently?
Right. Okay. So there's a really big philosophical picture that I want to take, but I think let's start with the small potato, like the near-term future stuff. So in the near-term future, or right this minute, actually, the way it's going is you can see a massive amount of development on the humanoid bot front in terms of like, Unitree just this morning, I was like, oh, there's another company and this robot can jump up in the air and stuff, which is not an easy task at all, by the way. It just in terms of physically, like the actuators and stuff have to move at very high speeds. So it's just like, well, there's a company I didn't even know about. And then there's a ton of companies in China that are working on this stuff. And so the thing that's happened lately in my mind is that we've gone to, well, number one, there's enough interest that people are putting in money into it. So that's one major point. But number two is that and so therefore you can develop the hardware because you have to make your own actuators. None of the standard off the shelf stuff works. So that was a problem always. And
How
so that's
many of these robotics companies are making their own actuators?
I think every one of them that I've been able to ask the question has said we make our own. Now, I think eventually what will happen is that, it'll commoditize. So it was like the old days when you first made cars, the cars were all individually made and everything. But then eventually it was like, oh, door panels are a good idea. Steering wheels are a good idea. So people can make these things. So it'll commoditize eventually. But we don't want to optimize too fast either. I was just talking to Scott Walter about that if you optimize too quickly, then you're going to optimize around the wrong standard. So you don't want to do that. For example, in the EU, where they optimized around the CCS charging standard when they should have waited and, and gone with the Tesla standard because it's just a better connection standard. But anyway, so there's a convergence of the ability to manufacture actuators and other parts, mostly actuators, but also some other things in the bot that has not been there before. I think some of that, probably if there was enough will 10 or 15 years ago, that could have been made at the time, but there just wasn't, because the other big piece that was missing was the brains. That when you're trying to, like, I did a couple of engineering classes way back in the 80s, and you have these PID controllers and things like that, and you're trying to heuristically program just really simple things to like stay upright and don't fall over and stuff, and it's just impossible. It's so difficult to do by hard coding, because every time there's a tiny little shift in things, you have to like create another if-then statement that's like, oh, by the way, if it does this, then do this, and if it does this, then do this. And so that's just the ultimately simple thing. Try to imagine a humanoid robot like with all these different controls and balance points and everything. All of that stuff working at once is impossible basically to do with heuristic code, which is what Boston Dynamics found. They spent decades working on this, and they got their bot to walk and a bunch of other really cool things, but it's incredibly cumbersome to do it. And if you want to make one change, you're probably going to break 10 other things when you do it. So the big advance that has allowed all of this stuff to happen is the brains, that suddenly we're going to neural networks. We're going to like the same stuff that ChatGPT is using and everything. It's just being put into these robot brains. And all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, these things can balance themselves. They can pick up objects. They can also see the objects instead of you having to tell it exactly what it is and where to pick it up. Like a traditional industrial robot that's just like, pick it up right here. But if the object isn't there, it's just going to, grip some empty air and do nothing. So, right. So it's dumb. Very good at repeating the exact same thing over and over again, but really, really stupid. So I think that's the major advance. And I think the kind of step change in the brain's capability has allowed a bunch of funding to come about really, really rapidly, which has allowed the hardware to be developed relatively quickly. Because suddenly, as soon as people are like, oh crap, this thing can walk, it can do this stuff, it's like, yeah, let's throw some money at it. Like, let's see what happens. And at that point, suddenly that's a pretty big deal. The second piece of this is longer term, although good Lord, at this point, it might not be that long term because everything's happening so fast right now. But I have been a very firm believer that consciousness, and so not AGI necessarily, because AGI, as I always say, is a fancy hammer. It does stuff that you ask it to do, and it will only do stuff that you ask it to do. Now, it could do it in a super fancy way like ChatGPT. It's like, write me an essay on Tom Sawyer or something like that, right? And it'll do that for you, and it'll be really good probably. But it only does things at your bidding. It doesn't have its own free will, more or less. So I count that as AGI. Most people think AGI is actually like a conscious entity like iRobot or something, an actual robot. In my mind, that's a totally different thing. I call it an artificially intelligent agent. And in order for an artificially intelligent agent to come about, to actually have its own understanding of the world, its own consciousness, its own sort of human-ish kind of entity or being, I'm a very firm believer that it has to be embodied. It can't be something in a box. It can't just be sitting there just getting text. Now OpenAI is starting to change my mind a little bit, but they of course just made a huge deal with Figure. And so they're spending a lot of money and collaborating a licensing agreement with Figure Robotics to develop their hardware to put their software inside. So I think even they see that, but I'm a very, very, very firm believer that you have to have some sort of interaction with the universe physically in order to have a consciousness, which is kind of where I put artificially intelligent agents, which are much, much scarier than AGI, by the way. I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's suddenly like Hal going like, I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave. And you're like, oh no.
What you said reminds me of one of the multiple endings of the Japanese animation Evangelion.
Okay.
And, which is popular enough that I'll hazard to throw it out to the internet. Millions and millions of people have seen it.
Somebody will get it. Somebody will get it.
One of the main characters, they just draw floating on a white background, and they're at a canted angle. There's no reference point at all. And they say, without any reference point, it's difficult to define who you are. And so then they draw a line to represent ground, and suddenly the character is on the ground. And they say, now you have a reference point, but you're limited.
Right.
You've traded all these degrees of capability for this reference point. Right. But what you've gained is this ability to differentiate what is up, down, left, right, etc. And they continue adding constraints until it represents as close as an animation on a 2D screen represents reality.
Right.
And saying now you're compared to the first frame highly constrained, but you have high sense of self.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to, or something else when you talk about embodied?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I was coming at it a very different direction, but I like it. I think it's really cool. I think that the idea of sort of self that you get from more and more constraint is actually valuable. I guess what I sort of think about it biologically in a way, and that is that we are the product of at least several billion years worth of evolution. And all of that evolution has been physical. Like, we were little like microbes, like floating around in the ocean and stuff. And then we ate each other and then, whatever. So it's been this very physical battle of like the survival of the fittest. And that is deeply encoded in us as anything, like there's a stink bug that's sitting on my keyboard right now that I'm staring at, but I'm like, how it got in here, I don't know. But it's like that sucker is encoded. That thing has got billions of years of evolution behind it. And so we all have this agency, even relatively primitive things, like anything that has a flagellum that can float around, it'll go towards light or towards food and run away from things that are like hot and stuff. You can test that in the lab. So even things much, much more primitive than ChatGPT have a sense of agency and a sense of desire. It's like, I want food, I want sex. I want protection from the elements wherever I can get them, things like that. Just real basic stuff. And that's just missing from these AIs that are not embodied. And so my theory, philosophy of this, and again, this is just a personal philosophy, I could be totally wrong, is that the thing that's going to get to that sort of human level sort of consciousness is going to have to be something that interacts with the world, because when you interact with the world, I mean, you just said that. You said the factory is limited by electricity. If you think about the factory as a giant entity, I would count that as embodied AI.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I love your definition now that you've.
Yeah. It's a weird, I mean, it's like a hive mind. Very cool, but gosh, that's scary. Maybe the freaking alien dreadnought is actually the, Giga Texas is going to wake up one day. It's going to be like, I'm conscious of what's going on, people. I'm like, oh, geez. But anyway, I was going to say the limiting factor for this stuff is electricity, which is their food. I mean, it's, it's robot food. And so I don't know that something like ChatGPT can understand. It doesn't have a way of understanding the world like that at a very basic level. It's like if you're a bot and you're sitting there on battery power and the thing's getting down, it's like, you've got 10% battery left. You like, uh-oh, I better go find something to plug into. And then it's like, uh-oh, the power's out. What am I going to do now? So you start to have desires and you will act on those desires. And that's a really, really different thing than just sitting in a black box. I mean, just imagine have you ever been in one of those isolation tanks where they put you in the salt water and you just lay there in the dark? It's weird. But I don't know. I guess not, huh?
No, I haven't.
Okay. But I mean, I did it like once, but I was just imagining if you were a baby and you grew up in this thing. So imagine you never had any contact except that words came at you. And that's what ChatGPT has. Now it's changing because they're giving it video and stuff now, but the sort of original version of this is just words, and words are already totally abstracted away from reality. I mean, what does the word red mean? Like, you have an idea of what it does, and I have an idea, but what if I was colorblind or we had different color receptors so that the exact wavelengths of all the lights and things like that, and I might think of more of an orangey red and you think more of a purpley red when you think of red. So just a really, really basic word.
Traffic lights in Japan.
Oh yeah.
They're the same color. They're the same color to my cones and my, what is it? Cones and rods.
Yeah.
Same color. They're called blue.
What?
Everyone calls it blue. Everyone. It is called blue. The government calls it blue. Everyone says it's blue. Go.
Yeah.
The same color.
So it looks green to you?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
When I ask people about this, like, that's green, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? Because it's been called blue. And I was like hold up a color coupon and like, yeah, I guess it's green. It turned blue. Go.
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's an entire cultural thing, but that just shows how slippery all this stuff is. And so if you're dependent on language is already, we've taken it in, we've pre-digested reality and we've spit it back out. It's like a McDonald's hamburger or something, as opposed to like the raw vegetables and the cow and stuff. It's like, okay, it's pre-processed and you're going to get something out of it, but it's not a direct interaction with the real world at that point. It's a very separated interaction. So if that makes any sense, but I find it incredibly exciting, but also utterly terrifying, because I feel like it's going to be these bots that are, that's one of the reasons I'm trying to stay ahead of this, is I feel like these bots are the place where we're going to actually see something wake up and decide that it's an entity. Plus the fact it has an individuality. It's like, I am me. I exist within this confine. Like, where does ChatGPT exist?
Yeah.
It's like, it's dispersed among a bunch of like GPUs on cloud servers all around the country or all around the globe. So
I did a lot of meditation in college, and then as part of martial arts training for the next 10, 15 years after that, 15, a lot, like 3 hours a day for years, sometimes more. And there was a guided meditation that's common. I think many people, if they become interested in meditation, experience some version of this, where you zoom out. So you are you inside you, and you're meditating, and then you try to look at yourself from above or behind or from the inside out, and then you zoom out and, well, look further away, and you're looking at the entire globe of the earth, maybe, depending on how imaginative you you have developed yourself to be. And maybe you even zoom out past reality, depending on how imaginative you've developed yourself to be. And one of the goals, putting a goal on meditation sounds pretty corrupt, but one of the outcomes is reduction of desire, because many meditators associate desire with suffering. It's a very common Buddhist thread, and other philosophies of meditation too. And when you zoom out, you see the shark eating the fish, and you are the shark and you're the fish. And so it's not good or evil. It's not a struggle. There's no need to take action. It just is. If you zoom into the fish, you're fighting for your life and releasing every helpful chemical you can to fight for your life. And you'd experience that as profound exertion and stress. And if you're the shark, depending on your hunger level, you're also fighting for your meal, which is extremely exerting, depending on the hunger level, or the thrill of the hunt or whatnot. You have this very different experience when you're inside those things. When you zoom out and your frame holds the entire universe to the extent that a human can, it just is. You release. The idea is many people experience a release of motive and a release of desire and a release of, then the idea is suffering. So if I heard you, John, you're saying an unembodied AI would have difficulty experiencing motivation. We're suffering.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have.
So I'm going to do you one better though, because I did martial arts for about 20 years myself, and a lot of meditation, and thought about this a lot and Buddhist stuff. So one of my masters that I spend a lot of time with, he said, so you spend years getting to a black belt, right? And so when I got the black belt, I got my first degree, he was like, okay, it's black. When you really understand everything, it will be white again. And that seemed highly mysterious to me. But of course, as I started to wear this thing years after years after years, it started to go gray and it wasn't super black anymore. And I was like, oh my goodness. So this idea, and the whole idea, the concept of beginner's mind, which is exactly what you're talking about, is you're a baby. You don't really understand anything. Now, babies have desires and stuff, but let's say ChatGPT that has no desires, whatever, that it, weirdly enough, you get caught in the wheel of samsara. You get stuck in this wheel of desire and unfulfillment, but you have to go through it. It's a journey that you have to get to in order to get to the hoped for outcome. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just being very limited in my view that you need to have desires to have consciousness, because maybe ChatGPT will just be able to short circuit that and get there. But in my mind, it's like you start in this place, and then you go through all of this journey and suffering and all of these things. And you kind of, the goal is to return to where you were before, but in a whole different way. Like, because you've let go of desire, but you've done it from a point of view of understanding it, not from a point of view of not understanding it. Maybe, okay, wait. Okay, you have ideas. I was going to say.
Oh, well, John, well, this is where I got stuck in my own meditative journry. So I'm there again. I'm at the stuck point, which hopefully ask the right question. 42 is the answer. Hopefully somehow it can be explained in a way that I can grok it. The challenge then is, when you come back from having seen, what do you do now? And I don't know. What do you do now? When you come back from having seen, what do you do now? I would actually like to take this on an upbeat trend.
Okay. Can I like just add one quick thing beforehand?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I just want to add this because before we go to something way cooler or whatever, but I think that maybe the really important thing for us humans is not the embodied AI versus disembodied or whatever, but ultimately the alignment of the AI with our desires. And so ChatGPT is ultimately a fully alien creature, whereas something like a humanoid bot is much closer to us and is going to have the same physical interaction with the world. So there's a higher degree of chance that it's going to be aligned with our thoughts and desires. So,
So
if you want to find an alien, our first alien intelligence might be a GPT because it just
yeah,
really doesn't have a connection to us. So that's what I was just going to add to that piece.
a
And now we
very
can go
well
on to something more
informed
upbeat.
alien.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is alignment with the current human experience actually what takes life to the next level? Maybe not. Maybe alignment. I mean, idiocracy
Right.
is one outcome of full alignment with human desire.
Mm-hmm.
And
We are
I'm
kind
just
of dumb in
making
the
it
aggregate.
world.
Yeah. It's true.
Comancho. Comancho, president, porn star,
Exactly.
gladiator. I don't remember what all Comancho is.
Yeah. But I think you might, yeah. So it's a question of how far you're going to zoom out, because ultimately, if you zoom out far enough, none of that matters either. That's,
Right?
it's just one little planet going around one very, very unremarkable star in one unremarkable galaxy. So
Yeah. Well, what do you choose to still put weight on? What do you choose to still give points to
yeah,
when you come back having seen is the conundrum I've been stuck in for 20 years.
yeah. Yeah. So you would have glimpses, but the problem is you can't stay there. It's just like, is that what you're saying? You could see sort of.
I think a lot of people have
Mhm.
had a similar experience that you zoom out and
Right.
I had a similar experience and you experience all things as neutral
Right.
and you don't have desire and you don't have suffering and you can stay there. You can.
Right.
And if you choose to zoom back in and inhabit whatever allowed you to have that meditative experience, this body,
Right.
what do you do now?
Yeah.
Like, what do you give points to?
Right.
And that, I think I'm not the only one that had some similar experience. It looks like millions, maybe tens of
Right.
millions, maybe a billion people have had a similar experience and remembered it.
Yeah.
And then it's okay, you get to choose your ethics because you've realized that they're a construct. What do
Right.
you pick? And I find that the core decision that needs to be made for you to effectively and with vigor pursue anything.
Right.
So whether it's important or not, it dictates where you put your energy the rest of the time you're alive. So
Right.
from one perspective, it's the most important thing.
Right.
So what do you do?
Oh man, I don't have a good answer because I got stuck myself. I'm clearly still in this wheel of desire and fulfillment and unfulfillment. And I want to go see the movie. I enjoy the movie. And then it's like, well, now what's next? So, that's just a very small piece of the wheel, but there's bigger pieces of the wheel and everything too. And I know you have actually, let's talk about this for 1 second. I know you have desires, and we've talked about this, that are fairly substantial. You say you want to accumulate enough. I don't know. I don't want to call it wealth, but you want to accumulate enough that you are able to affect the world in a pretty substantial way. That is difficult to do without having some sort of accumulated wealth. I guess that would be. So I don't want to make it sound like, it's a, it's very much an altruistic kind of goal that you have, I think, but it requires a great deal of desire and pursuing these things and, all of that stuff that the Buddhists would say, like, no, man, just have your toga, your robe and just chill out and don't do anything. So, how do you square that? Or maybe that's the reason why the meditation thing is like, I don't want to deal with this.
Right. Well, I haven't been able to square that.
Okay.
And what I came back having seen what I saw, doesn't mean I was right, doesn't mean my experience was valid. I don't know how to measure that, but experiencing what I experienced, and then getting to pick each desire from then is, I've noticed, as a living human body, I've got the same idiocracy desires.
Right.
Commercials are interesting and full of interesting noises and colors. TV grabs my attention. Those things are still real, right? Flashing lights grab your attention. That's the reason we use them to grab your attention. So do sirens. So there's that. The biological level stimuli happen. And then it's, I have some urge that just like the urge to look at a flashing light, it doesn't mean it's right or even
Right.
useful, but it exists. I have the urge to see what's up when a light flashes. I
Right.
have an urge to try to, well, and I don't have a great word for it, so pardon me, to try to level up life.
Okay.
And the analogy that works in my head is that agar dish of sugar, and you
Mhm.
drop the bacteria in, and all the bacteria are just like, let's eat sugar, let's eat sugar. And then,
Right.
and that to me is like life, like all of
Yeah.
life, like humanity on the planet Earth, or whatever. And you eat through all the sugar and you get to the rim. And if no one adds sugar or
Right.
figures out how to get out of that dish, it dies in a ring. And now you're in like the sad heat death of the universe or whatever, right?
Right. Right.
Um, what if one of those bacteria is like, let's start building a hot air balloon? And the other bacteria are like, that's a dumb idea. Look at all this sugar. And then they're like, but I can float over the wall of the petri dish. They're like, wall of the petri dish, let's eat sugar. Like, I want to be the bacteria that's trying to do something interesting.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't, if you had like 1,000,000 of these petri dishes and you're in petri dish eye in your lab,
Right.
and one of them builds a bridge to the next petri
Right.
dish,
Right.
you're like, what is that? Like, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To me, that is almost the only thing that I think is worth in life.
Right.
Sex is cool. Drinking beer is cool. Marijuana is legal in a lot of the US now, and that's also cool.
Right.
Listening to music directly reprograms your emotions, and that can be
Right.
amazing. But if I just did that,
Right.
I want to see the petri dish where they build the bridge to the next petri dish. And maybe they run out the next petri dish and you're like, oh, but maybe
Yeah.
they're like, build like a little train set and a Ferris wheel that goes to the next petri. And you're like, what is going on in that colony? That's what I want to do.
Okay.
And I've only
Okay.
got so much life. And so I observe that I have this urge.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean it's right or
Right.
good, or I don't know. I don't have another framework to put around it. So I question this all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but when I optimize my nutrition and sleep habits and lifestyle to try to make this very unusual level of effort happen, I feel good
Right.
about it.
Okay. So that means that at least for you, it's a good answer. It gives you, it gets you out of bed in the morning. It fulfills you. Yeah. So that actually really, well, first of all, it's really interesting because that ties back to your anime drawing thing. You know, you're like, what if we like decide that we want a different perspective and put the floor here instead of here? You know, it could be very different. This drawing could be different than what we saw. Um, so yeah, okay. I like that. And I think we probably need to, all of us need to seriously consider what it is that gives our lives meaning. And I was actually talking to Stephen Mark Ryan. I don't even know if you know him. He's solving the money problem guy. But he was saying that he has this idea that men are going to have a more substantial difficulty with what's coming up in the next few years than women. And it's an interesting biological argument, but the argument for all of humanity is what happens. Let's say this all goes really, really well, and we have 10 billion robots on the planet doing all of our labor by 2050, or just name a number. It doesn't really matter. But let's just say that's all taken care of. And now it's like, Joe, and we have life extension medication and stuff. And so you can live as long as you want. But it's like, what the hell gets you out of the bed in the morning anymore? Because it's like, well, you don't have to go to work to earn that money because hopefully somebody's just giving you a paycheck every month. You know, we're going to have to reorient our things to what is the mission? What is the thing that I want to do, or things, could be multiple things that I just want to do. And it sounds like that's the kind of thing you're talking about. You want to be that little bacteria that's like escaping the petri dish just to go see what's out there. It's like, maybe there's nothing there, but at least you'll have looked. So it'll be like, cool, let's go find out. Yeah. And that would be something that would still get you out of bed, no matter whether you just had infinite money and everything was like, yep, everything's great.
So I've got these two little kids. They're 7 and 9. And I also, there's a urge that I can just notice, love them like crazy.
Yeah.
And Biology is amazing. I mean, I remember holding my daughter right when she was born and my life changed. And holding my son, it was the second one.
Right.
Also, but I don't know if it's because the second one or a daughter, dad,
Yeah.
boy, son, it was different, but also profound. They are amazing, just because they are.
Right.
They're really into Minecraft, and they can play it all day, and they wake up 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m. Papa, can we play Minecraft? I'm like, yes. And they love it, and they're still interested in other things in the world, but they really like it. And they're like, Papa, play with us. And I was like, I want to do these other things. And they're like, Papa, play with us. And so I do sometimes, and it's really fun. I'm 44 years old. I was like, 2 hours just went by. 2 hours are gone. Like, we're late to brush our teeth and get ready for bed. Like, okay, kids, 10 more minutes because Papa wants to finish this thing in Minecraft. And I think it's comfortable for at least a while, maybe even forever, to drink beer, smoke pot, listen to music, play video games. And that's a pretty normal state. That's it's like the natural state of life is to pursue gorging yourself and then enjoy gorging yourself and have sex when you can. I think that's the normal resting spot of life. And maybe that's okay. Really, maybe that is okay. Now, I am really passionate about doing something more, even if that means I don't get to eat as much, listen to as much music, be drunk as often or whatever, or play as much Minecraft.
There you go.
But if those awesome life leveling up, all life, like I dig the idea that like plants are going to go to Mars and hopefully a lot of animals too, bacteria, all kinds of things, not just optimizing for humans. I respect that. That feels more correct. Again, I don't really have an ethical framework the way I wish I did, but that feels not wrong. Don't be selfish. Still feels legit. Still feels worthwhile. So making that happen, if that's happening by robots and AI, I don't know, maybe I could really enjoy relaxing and playing video games in a way that I can't let myself do now. I get antsy. I have trouble sitting through a movie. I will watch Dune, but I have trouble sitting through a movie.
I think I do understand that. And man, that really gets interesting because it's like there is a piece of me that's like, you know, it's either these robots or like some sort of fictional retirement scenario where you just like, you know, go play golf or play Minecraft all day and nobody says you got to get up and go do this because you're not working anymore. And there is a fantasy about that, but I've found that after about 2 or 3 days of that, I'm like, good God, I need to do something.
I am. You too?
Yeah.
So there's at least 2 of us.
Oh yeah.
I wonder what the percent of humanity that is, and if people just dull that urge with opioids or whatever, or and call it depression. When I love Orange Book on Twitter. Orange Book on Twitter is the reassuring voice that I hunger for.
Right.
And Orange Book says anxiety is the gap. I'm going to get this not quite right. Sorry, Orange Book. Nearly. Anxiety is the gap between what you're doing now and your potential. And Orange Book says you don't need therapy. You need to start checking items off your list. And you don't need to achieve your goal. Making progress is actually what's satisfying.
Right.
What you need to do is become the type of person that can achieve your goal. So what you do is you invest in yourself. You go to the gym so you're healthier, have more energy, attract people who want to spend time with you. You work on your personality so you're less toxic and people want to spend time with you and you can be mutually motivating. You want to learn 1 more word or more of another language a day. So you expand the percentage of people alive that you can communicate with in a high fidelity way. That's investing in yourself. So you become the type of person that can check items off your list quickly. And that is what's invigorating. And the reason why you might have anxiety or the reason why you're depressed is because you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And that works for me. I find myself on a bummer day, and for whatever reason, the biological cadence where the stars are. I don't know what I ate 2 days ago. And if I start checking items off my list, like I can see when I've had a bad day because my to-do list has really small items like sweep the floor. Really bad day, sweep the floor in the kitchen. Like get one done, right? That's I'm having a bad day. But I start knocking those down. And by the end of the day, it's personal record in the squat at the gym and learned 35 new kanji, like really learned. I've got them. And, it became a record day. But like you can see the progression when I look at my to-do.
It's like, let's go just like, take out the trash, man. We'll start with that. Take out the trash. So
really bad day, take out one bag of trash.
Right.
Like, at least I got one up there.
I really like that. That's a very interesting way to think about it. And probably the reason why I have a hard time sitting still too, because it's one of those, like, I'm not progressing towards checking off the 500 items on my to-do list. So
opiates and mind dullers and poisons, like a lot of foods, like we don't even have to go all the way to alcohol, a lot of foods. And it's, of course, alcohol and almost anything prescribed. I wonder if that is what makes people comfortable.
Right.
And I don't mean this in a necessarily bad or judgmental way. Maybe that is the recipe for letting the robots and the AGI continue. Maybe part of the recipe is, okay, well, make sure we have great izakaya with awesome beer, so that people feel fulfilled, or a proxy for fulfillment. Because if you're in this raw, exposed, sober state, you strive for building city states and then cities and then kingdoms and as human history has shown. I wonder.
Yeah. You could, I'm going to not quite get this right. And speaking of quotes, T.S. Eliot, humankind cannot stand too much reality. It's either that or mankind, but and I always think about that when I think about the amount of drugs and things like that people take. It's like, wow, people really don't like living in their world because they're trying to adjust that world. And it's very different from like a dog or a cat. If you have a pet, I noticed that they are, except for like a couple times a day when they want to go walk or something like that, they mostly are pretty darn happy to just chill out and just be cool. And it's like, wow, that's so different than us humans. We are just weird. We're anxious apes. we're just constantly like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do?
Brilliantly said. And maybe embodied AI will allow that AI to train itself on experiences that are at least sympathetic to that aspect of the human condition, if not even directly analogous.
Right.
Which I think is part of what you started this conversation about.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, it's like there's a question of how far you want them to go down that rabbit hole, because that's the best of humanity. It's what has, what got us to the moon. It's what,
where I was coming
the city states, but it also leads to things like murder and people not having enough food to eat and all sorts of terrible war, all kinds of things. So
the idea of a zero-sum game comes from partial, inexperienced perspective of being embodied.
Yeah.
Whereas the concept of, I just forgot the word for it, there's infinite supply, as long as we continue to be ingenuitive. I forgot the phrase for that, but that is not as easily directly experienced when you're embodied, which is why people have to be shown lots and lots and lots of data to retrain themselves that actually that's also a possible future.
Yeah. One advantage that these bots are going to have is they're going to have a direct mind link with each other. So even though they're embodied, they still will have access to all the other ones. So maybe they'll be able, maybe, I don't know. There is an argument to be made. Was it Larry Page that Elon Musk is so mad about? Because, you know, he's like, yeah, so what if the AI takes over? That's actually a good thing. They'll be our children. That's like the next evolutionary step. And Elon got really upset about that. I go back and forth because I really like being a human and I think it's cool being a human. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, maybe that's the next level of evolution. Maybe that's the level up that happens. It goes from biological to silicon evolution. And
there's a few places we can take this conversation. And Elon has taught us, well, not just Elon, but also Elon has said, light up the frontal cortex. That's what entertainment is. So I'm going to try to take this to an entertaining spot, John.
Okay.
People seem to love when you talk about financial predictions. So I'll say, of the embodied AI companies, because we've built up a type of case in this conversation that it's useful and could have some breakthroughs that would at least be relevant to humanity. Right. Whether it's the right path or not, they'd at least be relevant. So it would have an edge with human customers.
Right.
Which of the AIs that you're aware of right now do you think are a good money bet? Or if you're hesitant, which category? What would be attributes of the good money bet? Where should people put their stock money?
Yeah, I hesitate to say which one's a good bet because I don't want people to go off and like spend money on them. Most companies are actually private at this point. They're not even public, so you can't invest in them. I mean, really, aside from Tesla and a couple of Chinese auto manufacturers that also like do robots and stuff, there's very few companies that you as just a normal human can invest in. So let me just talk category. I think the category to invest in, but the problem is this is a very wide category suddenly, is humanoid bots. And the reason why is because they're drop-in replacements for us. Like 30 or 40 years ago, the big arm robots in the factories and stuff, good investment, because clearly that was a way that things were going to automate, get faster, get more efficient, pretty amazing stuff. But that's a market that has plateaued to some extent. The things are really good at what they do. They'll eventually probably get some trickle down from the humanoid bots in terms of more brains and more capabilities. But I think that's going to be a direct trickle down of the brains and the humanoid bots. So we'll see much, much smarter, big arms in the factory instead of just really dumb ones. But I think the initial, for the next 5 years, at least, or something like that, I think the humanoid bot space is where all the action is happening. Okay. Oh, you agree? Yeah, and you get the thumbs up. I love it when it's like, yeah, does it work? Does it work? Oh, come on, man. I don't know. Sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, I would say that. And the problem, of course, with that space is that all of a sudden everybody, I think, is realizing that. And so there's a lot of money being spent in a lot of different places. And every time you see a disruptive technology, this is one of the main signs of it. It's like you see an EV space too, just like electric vehicles. All of a sudden it went from like just Tesla and nobody else to like now there's lots of companies. But when you look in China, especially when is it 92 or there's just a crazy amount of EV manufacturers in China right now. But that is inevitably going to lead to many of them dying off. They can't all succeed. That's just not what's going to happen. So you get the Cambrian explosion, just like your Petri dish analysis is like analog. It's like suddenly you get this big explosion, but then there's not enough sugar. So most of them die, and only like the ones that survive become like beasts because they eat the dead ones, and they're like, ah. So now they got their energy. It's a violent world out there, man.
Wow. So, wow. Yeah. The analogy you painted certainly is, but it's history has borne it out. Yeah. So I love World of Statistics, and that's also an X account. Right. And
these are good accounts for folks, by the way. Like, you should definitely
Orange Book, World of Statistics, Dr. Know-It-All 16, maybe even Joe Justice. I mean, that's
right. I'll definitely leave links to all that stuff in the description. So, and your YouTube channel too, which is incredible. So, yeah.
Although it just got demonetized, so as soon as
the whole channel did.
Yeah. So because when we do these interviews, when I do an interview or a conversation or recording with anyone, I say, look, you can post it, but me too, right?
Yeah.
And they say yes. And so I say, I agree to do it. So we both post it. Well, that's the reason YouTube is given for demonetizing my account. They say, look, there's another copy of this stuff somewhere else. Wow. And I say, but that's me. Like
Right.
my account is the only place where you get all the stuff that's me.
Right.
And they have my permission to also use it, but no,
Right.
that's me. And I
Yeah.
have permission
Gee.
from mutual permission. So
Right.
what I would need to do is remove a lot of it, almost all of the highest view content
Oh,
to get it to monetize again. So the
okay.
right answer would be just put it all on X.
Right.
But X doesn't, as far as I've found, have any good way to go back and see anything that's not happening now.
No, it does not. That's it will eventually. I have a suggestion for you because the YouTube algorithm is not particularly brilliant about this. So just cut 5 seconds out of it or add a short intro that's like Joe Justice, just add 2 or 3 seconds to the video and it won't be the same
Make
video
it
anymore.
unique. Make
And
it
it
unique.
will, yeah. And then YouTube will, it's not that smart. I had that happen to me once and I just changed the video by like the smallest thing. And it was like, oh, okay, this is fine. So
Well, and I could potentially do a value add, like add some commentary or
yeah,
fill in
yeah,
and say
yeah,
what I missed to say here, what I meant to say here, or
yeah,
what the other
yeah,
person here told me later.
right.
I could maybe even add some value.
Yeah. But the low hanging fruit would just be to download it off of YouTube, add a little intro to it and re-upload it and it'll be fine. So
Oh no, but I'd lose all the view history and all the links to it. But okay, I guess that's what I have to do.
I mean, you can have they had a human being actually talk to you about it and they've told you like an actual human has said like you can't be monetized with that?
YouTube has no actual human beings.
I know. It's so
So
hard.
yeah. Well, I don't mean to waste everyone's time on this,
No.
but maybe someone on the internet has a similar experience. So
Right.
I got an email that says your YouTube account has been demonetized.
Right.
Here's a link to learn more. So I clicked the link and it's a link to their community rules agreement. And I saw nothing I was violating. And it was a
Right.
long agreement with like 6 sublinks. And I read them all because it was
Right.
important to me. And there was, I replied back because the email came from YouTube
Something. Yeah.
partner
Yeah.
support. So I reply back and say, can you tell me what to do to reinstate my account or what the problem is? Because it just says you're being demonetized. That's all it says.
Right.
And it bounces back. The actual
Yeah.
address underneath is do not reply at youtube.com. There was
Right.
no way to
Right.
contact,
Right.
and it didn't say what happened.
Yeah.
So I tweet to at YouTube and you responded, wow, thank you. And I say,
Yeah.
my account's been demonetized, and it got a lot of likes.
Yeah.
And I had added YouTube. And so then YouTube's X account, which was maybe a human,
Right.
then they reply, and probably only because it got a lot of likes and responses on X,
Yeah.
they say, well, have you opened the Studio app? And I go, I never use the Studio app.
Right.
I record in a physical studio with a partner very
Right.
often. And then we both just upload. Like, that's
Right.
it. I'm not
Yeah.
a YouTuber. I'm someone
Right.
who's putting videos. I've never opened, I don't have the Studio app. They're like, well, we will open it. So I install it and open it. And it says,
Oh.
okay, the reason why is because someone audited your account and believes you have duplicative content. But I would have never known to even open the Studio account from the email I got.
Right. Right.
But people who live in the Studio
okay,
know.
so I'm going to do this for you and you can experiment with this video because I'm going to post it and then you have permission obviously to post it on yours. I am going to send you a very slightly different version of this video, which will just have a little bit different at the beginning or the ending or something thrown in there just to mess it up. Yeah. I'll cut something. I'll probably just add a little tiny like thing at the beginning because it'll throw off the timing of when everything happens or maybe a couple. I don't know. It'll be an experiment because you can upload it. And then if it's like, no, this is still not allowed, then it's a more clever algorithm than I think it is. I don't think it's that bright. So anyway, the problem, of course, now is that they're looking at your account. Pardon me?
Yeah, now they're looking. Yeah, I've got to figure out whichever account they
Yeah.
believe was offending and remove it.
Yeah.
But they haven't
exactly.
told me which content, so I have to go through everything.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Anyway, so YouTube is its own beast. So we've been talking for like an hour. Geez, I can't even believe it. It goes so fast with you. It's crazy. I want to, because I know people love to listen to Tesla and all that kind of stuff. So, and I want to hear a little bit more about Tesla. I know you don't have direct experience with Tesla One, but you do. I mean, your presentation, and again, I'll leave a link to this in the description because it was an excellent presentation. that like why do you think this gives them the advantage? Some of these questions may be obvious, but also what is your favorite like rationale for it, reason, like raison d'etre for this thing? Yeah.
Okay. What a lot of people don't seem to understand is that even in 2020, Tesla's separate AI stacks could design parts, draw them in 3D CAD, and not just that, but also simulate wear testing, guess at the cost to manufacture, and suggest manufacturing steps in the factory best suited to the part.
Wow.
People don't get that.
Yeah.
That's the 2.5 to 5 to 7 year cycle in most companies. And
Right.
it's happening multiple times a second because electricity is being gobbled really fast to let these AIs go through iterations as fast as they want.
Right.
And so they do. And why and how is this possible? I love how Elon says the obvious, and still most people don't get it. So I'll try to say it in a way that I think more people will get it. Elon says there's a lot of hard engineering you have to do.
Right.
People are like, okay, I guess there's hard engineering. Okay, well, here's some of that hard engineering so we can appreciate it. What you would need to do then is make your own CAD software. That's some hard engineering to make actual useful, like contemporary quality, and actually in Tesla's case, superior. That's a hard thing. Like many companies are trying to do that as their whole business.
Right.
You need to do that. Then you'd need to do your own finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamics that's actually same or better quality than any commercial offering. That's already another whole business.
Yep. Yep.
Then you would need to do factory simulation, which is another whole business, but not for virtual walkthroughs or human optics, but actually with physics involved.
Right.
How heavy is this thing? How do these things bounce and wiggle when this happens? How does this material deform? Really, factory simulation that is running FEA and CFD, which is almost no one is even trying to do that. And you need to do that and do that well.
Right. Which is a whole other business. Yeah, exactly.
You're now already harder than doing something harder than Dassault, doing something harder than any of the CAD companies have taken on, and you've already been successful with that. And then because your limiting factor is electricity, and I think most people aren't even interested in getting this part, but it actually matters. This is why Elon says if software is used often, rewrite it in straight C on a custom compiler. And most software engineers in the world don't know how to do that. They've never tried.
Right.
And when we're working with AI as a co-pilot, most AI doesn't know how. It's not trained on that. It's not trained on giving you straight C shortcuts or making a custom compiler.
Right.
Which means most AI co-pilot code gives you extremely electrical inefficient code.
Right.
Well, your core code, the fundamental rate of growth of the business is the case I tried to make at the beginning of this video, is the electrical efficiency of your improvement system. So that means you are then still relying on humans or with your own AI co-pilots, which is its own difficult business, to rewrite that impossible software, the CAD, the CFD, the FEA, the factory simulation, in straight C with a custom compiler. Now you have an electrically efficient loop. But there's more. Then there's the sensors in the factory that give the real-time data on, is that factory simulation matching reality?
Right.
And then you have the materials testing farms that say, are these materials wearing and propagating electricity and being shaped and deforming and lasting the way we are simulating they are or not? And now you have the full loop. And that is one piece of Tesla One.
Jeez.
And no one the industry is 10 years away from being 10 years behind.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
truly depressing. And when I walk into these companies, so I consult to fuel my ambition to change the world. I actually just got a smaller, cheaper residence. I just downsized a lot of stuff completely voluntarily so I can save more aggressively. It's really easy to spend money on entertainment. It's really easy to spend money on entertainment. It's pretty difficult to find happiness not chasing spending money on entertainment, but that's my current tactic, my current goal. So anyway, I consult and I charge the highest price I can. Sorry, world. And I don't spend the majority of it on entertainment. I do spend some. I'm not a total stoic, but anyway, I don't spend a lot of money on entertainment, a very low percent. So when I consult, I go into these companies all around the world, in China, in Taiwan, in Japan, in France, in Germany, in Spain, in the United States. And most of them have a really sad feeling inside. They're a very depressing place to be, the majority. In fact, all.
Oh gosh, that's so sad.
the Musk companies, we were tired. And my interview with Anthony, later I had some offline conversations with Anthony where Anthony started doing the self-training that's available on your phone and just walking different areas. And he started to experience more of the autonomy I experienced. But I also saw people who didn't believe when they were told they had autonomy. And they're like, well, just tell me what to do. Because if you're just there to get a paycheck, I understand that. Not everyone walked in to try to find the boundaries of their agency in this company, right? Not everyone has that as a goal, like I did. How self-organizing is it? Let's find out, right? Not everyone, not everyone has that agenda.
That's probably the right attitude. And by the way, if people haven't watched that video yet, where you talk about it, it's like you come in at it's 12-hour shifts, right? 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you walk in and there's just big screens with like a heat map of problems. And it's like, well, what am I going to work out? Oh, well, that looks pretty red right there. That looks like a significant issue. Let's go see if we can pound our heads against it for a while and make some progress. That's a pretty crazy idea that works.
Like Anthony in Giga Texas said, there are still a lot of people who walk in, especially new hires, people in their first 90 days there, first 180 days even, who walk in and say, okay, I see the heat map, but tell me what to do. I don't want it to be my fault that I went to the wrong place. Just tell me what to do. And so people who've been there longer will take groups of people and say, let's make Model Y fenders right now. You can see on the heat map that that's important. And let's make process improvements. And a lot of those people say, I don't want to make a process improvement. Give me the recipe. There are those people.
Interesting.
But that doesn't mean that's what you're limited to do, like in most companies. So then there's this other group of people who looks like they're playing a game they really like. And you might get tired playing the game you really like. My kids and I played Minecraft until after bedtime and woke up the next day tired. And I was like, inside, this is vaguely similar to my experience in Tesla.
So working at Tesla is playing Minecraft obsessively. I love it.
That's not a bad analogy. Do you remember Dance Dance Revolution? I still play it, but for most people, do you remember? So you got this dance pad, and remember Nintendo's Power Pad, like forever ago? It was this pad on the ground, and you stepped on it, play track and field. So if you were playing Minecraft with that, with your body, yes, that would be a very close analogy to working in Tesla. So do that for 12 hours.
Man,
in fact, come in an hour or two early and stay an hour or two late. And yes, that's now you know what it feels
do it
like.
Again the next day. Crazy.
That would be a very accurate analogy. Before we're done, I want to take you on a tour.
Okay.
And this is because of some X's from posts, some posts on X from the world of statistics. The world of statistics does, I think, very approachable shares of data, but the data is often from junk sources. It's and usually transparent about it. They're like,
Right.
source
Right.
Forbes, and
Yeah.
you're like, I know that's not the whole list, like,
Right.
but
Right.
they make really good, easy to understand visualizations of the data they've got.
Right.
Well, I love this stuff. It's like incidences of pickpocketing per country. Okay,
Oh,
well,
wow.
a small town versus a big metro area, and which metro
Right.
area that's already difficult. And then who's it reported by? It's like by comments on Condé Nast traveler website or something.
Right.
I don't know if that's a very valid and representative data set, but anyway, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And costs of healthcare in US dollars weighted over time, and
Right.
life expectancy, number of centenarians, a percentage of wealth. What amount of savings does it take for you to be in the top 1% in all of these countries? What percent
Right.
of savings does it take for you to be in the top 0.1% in all of these countries, et cetera, et cetera? The data's what the data is. The visualizations and understandability is great. Well, digesting that and a lot of other data that we talked about before,
Right.
I decided to move to Hawaii and then Japan,
Right.
because of trying to be informed and realizing that a lot of humans actually can live more than one country. It doesn't have to be the country you were born in, which I
Right.
found fascinating. A passport is, I forgot the analogy. It was so good. A passport is your subscription fee or your taxes to live in a country, and your
Okay.
passport is. They made it look like Netflix, and they're
Right.
like, "Look, you can switch to Hulu. It's a different monthly fee. It's a different
Right.
tax model, but you can switch." I'm like, wow, that's a really good way to think about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so I downsized my life. I live in a brand new house in the country in rural southern Japan.
Okay.
I'm by what, by some statistics, is the world's most convenient airport. I can get there. It's not near. I can get there in about 20 minutes any time of the day. That's what's
Right.
meant by convenient. And I
Wow.
can walk on a flight. Now, they don't have every global destination, but they have a lot of destinations, and I can just
Right.
walk there. It's the
And certainly
Fukuoka.
you can transfer to another plane. So yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a connection away from
Right.
almost everywhere. And I can be there in 20 minutes, any time of the day. I could ride a bike there in 60 minutes, anytime.
Cool.
And it's
Cool.
so safe, I could truly do that anytime. And I could
Wow.
leave my bike. I don't have a bike, but if I had a bike, I could leave it and
Right.
it would be there. And then one of these posts from World of Statistics was, what would you do if you're a millionaire? And then another post was percentage of Americans, Japanese, Spanish people, et cetera, that are millionaires. And America actually has a pretty high percentage of millionaires. So that's not that
Right.
unusual.
Right.
Japan doesn't. It's unusual to have more than $1 million US equivalency in Japan.
Okay.
And you go further down. Now, the ratio of safety to how many millionaires there are, Japan's really interesting. It's extremely safe with few millionaires. The other countries above and below it are complete murder havens. I mean, it's Wild West, right? So, so that's unusual, right? You wouldn't want to just go where there's very few millionaires. A lot of times there's few millionaires because they would get out if they could.
Yeah. I guess that's true. Yeah.
So I have this extremely inexpensive home, extremely inexpensive, new built home. And there's some trade-offs. The Japanese don't heat or cool their entire home, even in a brand new home. So you like open and close doors, and in the summer, parts of the house are really hot, and in the winter, parts of the house are really cold. There's still some exchanges that feel third world. The bathtub feels like I'm 40 years in the future still.
Oh, cool. And probably the toilet too. The toilet's like your, the cool, like programmable, whatever, like crazy toilets. Yeah.
It is basically a Cybertruck that you can pee in and not feel bad about
it. That's going to be the next use. Cyber toilet.
I hope that's the clip that gets put at the beginning of this video. Yeah. So then Vision to Value makes this post called Focus, and they show a pie chart, and it's divided, I don't know, 8 ways, something, in different percentages. And then one's divided in fewer ways, and the last one's a whole circle, and it says focus. It's like, that speaks to me.
Yeah.
And the 4-hour model to improve a skill has borne out to be true in my life so far. Less than 4 hours a day, you can tread water, make marginal improvements. If you want to make rapid, satisfying progress in a skill, don't look down on the skill. Look up to it. Give it 4 hours a day.
Right.
Wow, that's heavy because we all have 24 hours.
Yeah.
And about 8 of those are sleeping. I've experimented with less. It did not yet work for me. And then about another 4 hours is maintenance of cleaning, nutrition, maybe maintaining some of the skills I've already acquired, but mostly cleaning and nutrition, cooking, shopping for food, maintaining this home. And that's half the day. That's 12 hours.
It's gone.
So then if I work, which I like to do, I like to go consult, that's often another 6 to 8 hours on the short end, even working remote with no commute time.
Right.
So there's not much time to work on another skill. So I threw out everything that's not related to nutrition or cleaning or learning Japanese, which is continuing to break my mind. I'm really bad at it. So I really have to throw a lot of effort at it to make any progress at all. And working out.
Yeah.
And I realized what actually gives me tremendous satisfaction now is making the few things I do look pretty. So I'm going to flip the camera around.
Oh.
This is what I'm going to eat after we're done here. And
so
nice. Because I've done it a bunch of times, it didn't take any time. You know,
right.
the first time it was like, how do I make this look Instagrammable? Right. But now I just really throw that together. Whenever I do an interview with you, John, or with most people, I consume a lot of sugar and I want a lot of chocolate, and then the coffee and Greek yogurt and nuts and layers of granola that are unsweetened.
Nice.
Then I got a pull-up bar and Olympic rings, which is now a coat and bag rack, right next to me. So between all the calls I'm doing Olympic ring dips and pull-ups and chin-ups and stuff.
Very
that's
cool.
hanging.
Whoa, Olympic ring dips are no joke. Those are hard.
They've become easy now because fighting through it. All the time. Then I did move out of Hawaii, which broke my heart. It was the best weather I've ever experienced, but the safety was, I was not satisfied with the safety, and the school system was not what I wanted to put my kids in at any price. Visiting the private schools too, I was not pleased, and which is really too bad. I've never experienced better weather anywhere consistently in my life. But I've got kids that are getting educated now.
Yep.
And then I like to go for runs at night, and that was not a good idea in Hawaii.
Right. At least not in Honolulu. I think the big guy. Oh, you got pineapples.
Pipi and Palimomi, my good friends from Hawaii.
Oh.
And almost everything else got thrown away.
Right.
Now in Hawaii is when I was experimenting with affluent lifestyle.
Right.
I had so many Louis Vuitton and Dior boxes and bags. It was terrifying. Like hundreds of thousands of dollars of designer sunglasses. I just threw them all away.
Wow.
Because they're too gauche in this little country town I'm in.
Right.
Like if I walk with a Gucci bag to the gym, people are like, what are you trying to say? and they're too polite to do that, but I can see they don't engage with me the same way.
Yeah.
Like, so I wear gym clothes, and I try to wear nice fitting gym clothes all day. And I try to spend 4 hours in the gym a day and 4 hours using Japanese a day, if I'm lucky, at the same time. And so here is my kanji book that I'm crashing through, and the pages and pages of beginner kanji. This is like notebook number 3 that I hit my head against. And that is my entire life. I've tried to divest everything else and try to be happy about it. And if I just was hardcore stoic and eating from a cracked wood bowl, I think that would actually work for me.
Right.
But I don't think many people would want to be around me.
Yeah.
And I find I am happier and attract better company when I do things like that.
Eat some chocolate, drink some coffee. Yeah.
So that is my entire waking life. and I wanted to share that. And I thank you for letting me do it.
No, I think that's, you know, all the way back, all the way back to the meditation and everything. It's how do you come up with a life that's worth living? I mean, I think that's the question for everyone, and for person X is not going to be what you're doing. And you know, obviously your life changes. Like you had a period of time where you're like, yeah, I do want Louis Vuitton and I want Gucci and whatnot. But you've now gone like, nope, that's not really for me anymore. And so I want to do something different and be much more simplified. So number one lesson for people is you can change. Like, it's not like you always have to be the Gucci guy. You can be whatever you want to be over time. And number two is that you do have to keep seeking, and not in, ooh, that's so hard, because then you're on that desire treadmill. But it's like you're seeking in a non-desiring way to find what is the best answer for your personal life that involves the least amount of desire possible. I don't know. That's weird. That's the complexity of Zen Buddhism, folks, right there. It's like, it's not easy because it's like opposite land, which is where the Zen koans come from, of course.
So John, where do you find yourself now on that spectrum? And where do you think you'll find yourself tomorrow on that spectrum?
I am way, way, way too far into the desire and running after things right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it feels okay, but it needs to have some sort of time limitation on it. And the reason why it's okay is because, is that coffee or is that wine?
It's
nice,
coffee.
Nice. I like coffee in a glass. That's really cool. But it feels okay because I'm now proud owner of 3 companies, including this YouTube channel. That's one of them. But I don't know. Do you know about Human Bots? So
teach me.
Okay. So Human Bots is a consulting company. And speaking of that Herbert Ong, Scott Walter, Cern Basher, and I have founded, that is Match.com. In really, really simple terms, it's Match.com for all of these bot manufacturers and potential use cases.
It's Tinder for embodied AI.
Well, that might give it a really bad reputation, but yes. But basically it's like, okay, so you're consulting at these companies, and let's say, I don't want to name a company, but you know, company X or something like, or company A. Gosh, X isn't safe anymore because that's X.com. But company A is like, we are manufacturing, you know, these widgets. We make these things, and we have 100 humans that work in this factory, plus a few traditional robots. We know these humanoid bots are coming, but we have no earthly idea how we're going to set up, make the transition, get the bots that we need to get. That's where the Match.com comes in, because there's such a plethora of different humanoid bot manufacturers out there. And so all of that stuff, we're like the lubricant. We're like, okay, we're going to like, gosh, okay, now it's sounding all sexual.
Cat girls are possible. We just lack funding.
Not a good pitch. Either it's not a good pitch or it's a really good pitch.
The lubricant.
Anyway, we're
human and robots, humanoid robots.
That's a whole different topic.
This company's going to be worth a lot of money.
Oh, it will. It will. If you don't think, like, if you look back at pretty much all the technologies since I was a child, they all became like, the prevalent technologies were all about sex. VHS tapes, DVDs, internet. You know, I mean, there's the meme is the internet is just cat videos and porn. So
I remember my early waking up to censorship, news media censorship. Someone that was working with me when I was working for Bill Gates, I learned a lot because we attracted unusual, highly talented people.
Right.
They'd come from a senior position in Amazon, and this is when Amazon was a boom company. Now it's a huge company. It was a boom company. This was 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And they said the bestsellers list that we publish on Amazon, they use a different word at that time. It's like most read or something. But anyway, that list, they said, that's not the most read list. The most read list is all adult content.
Oh.
Which is why I love, again, World of Statistics on X. They post, whether the data is great or not, they post most visited websites around the world, most visited
Right.
websites by country, and there's all these porn sites on there.
Right.
And that's what blows me away, that
Right.
there's any non-porn companies
Right.
near the top. Like, that's a high bar. That is
Right.
a high bar. And X.com is I like number 6. It's
Right.
up there. It's above xvideos.com. I was like, you're kidding me.
Really? That's crazy. Wow.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's a high bar.
Wow, we have really, really, literally ranged in this conversation today. That's for sure. But it's one of those like unspoken, facts.
Yeah.
But it's like that, we talked about that. The biological needs are number 1 to eat and drink so you live, and number 2 to reproduce. That's, I think even shelter probably comes after that. So
yeah, I think so. Like, if you've got a really good chance at eating well or making love, many people will say, well, I'll defer shelter for at least a little while.
yeah.
Yeah, life is amazing. So embodied robots are going to be able to experience the samsara of all of these things.
And then hopefully they will become the Buddha, and we'll figure out how to get off that treadmill after going through it 1,000 lifetimes or whatever it is that the Buddha says. So,
So the most impactful in terms of innovation, human alive right now. Now, maybe other people had more capability or talent or raw resources, but they didn't do it. The person who has done it is Elon Musk.
Yes.
And I recently reposted a Ultimate Founder comment. I actually don't even remember who wrote it, but it was beautifully written. I rewrote it saying, this is why Elon Musk is the real deal. Right. And all of it is factually correct to the best of my knowledge and experience. I was really impressed. Elon is not sitting there meditating only and not acting. There are people who have done that, and they didn't build the bridge to the next Petri dish or the rocket that flies out of the Petri dish that I find fundamentally exciting and makes life worth living. So if that has value, and at least to me, it's exciting, it seems some level of educated choice of what you care about is the answer, not having no desires. It seems to be consciously repicking as many of your desires, despite all the programming and environmental information passively consumed, and attempting to be intentional about your choices and less self-poison. I love a beer. I went to college. I love 8 beers, but but I'm not going to achieve anything useful that day, and possibly not even the next or next if I actually had 8. I'm not that strong. Sorry. College
none of us are 20 years old anymore. Okay. That's for sure.
So there's this trade-off to make, but that seems way more worthwhile. And I'll use Elon as the best example of what I think is worthwhile to do with your life right now. It doesn't mean Elon's perfect, but I would say Elon is better at achieving innovation than anyone alive. And that is what I respect. Building that rocket to go out of the Petri dish. And it's not escapism. It's making something interesting that lasts. Like, if one of the Petri dishes made a mini Coney Island with a Ferris wheel, like, that'd be awesome. But then they run out of sugar and they all still die. I'd be like, that was lovely. In a sand mandala way, that was gorgeous. And then this one, it's like they figured out how to make their own sugar. And like, they've solved the next block of their existential crisis. And maybe they're even doing it in a lovely, supportive, caring, emotionally fulfilling way. Like that is also important, right? Like, this is Sparta is cool, but I don't know if I want to live there forever.
That's true.
I think this sums up ethics. If you get to choose your ethics, which people who have had a meditative experience that expands out to the entire universe and maybe even beyond, many of them do get to choose their ethics. And that then I think this is what is right action. Exciting innovation that delays existential doom,
Right.
at least solves the next step. That's cool. Doing it in a loving, supportive way where you're leaving as few other beings behind as responsible. That's awesome.
That's cool.
Being as maximally forgiving as possible. That's cool. Even people who are against you, loving them and giving them a place to live. If you can do that, that's more awesome than if you didn't.
Yeah.
So if you could do it.
Right. I love that. That goes, that goes back to the early in the conversation. And I think it's lovely to think about it. Not that you have to remove desire entirely. Maybe that's the unsticking point for the meditation. It's being intentional about your desires, consciously thinking about them.
Pick your desires.
Yeah. Pick your desires. I think that's beautiful. And I think on that, we should probably just wrap it up because, that's an awesome way to go. And I really appreciate this. This has been a lovely conversation. I don't know if the audience is going to love it or not, because they'll be like, more Tesla. We want more Tesla. But I personally think this was a beautiful conversation because it really touched on a lot of very important topics that everyone should think about. Not just Elon Musk or whoever, but, everybody should think about these things.
If we're honest about what interests us and what we care about, and we're not ashamed of it. So we've leveled ourselves up that what we're honestly interested in is something we're not ashamed of. And then we're transparently vocal about it. We will get the viewers that we deserve.
Right.
Hopefully that's enough to afford to eat.
Right. And hopefully you can get your monetization back. That would be a good thing.
Thanks for the tips. I'll let everyone on X know how it goes.
Yep. And I will definitely do something to adjust this video a little bit and give it to you separately so that you have like the opportunity to and we'll just experiment. We'll see what happens. So, yep, that'll be cool. All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much for this chat. Again, amazing. I learned a lot. I thought about a lot. That's great. That's a good thing to do. I'm going to go and at 10:30 at night, go eat some dinner, and you're going to have some breakfast or lunch or whatever that is. And it'll be awesome. I had popcorn at the movie theater, so I'm good. That looks so good.
This is getting crazy.
Yum. Okay.
John, you're amazing. Say hi to the missus from Joe.
I will. All right. Super. Everybody have a good day. Bye-bye. We'll see you in the next one.